Another day, another podcast, you think. Think again. This one's got, you guessed it, no limits.
Welcome to this deep dive, where we're diving headfirst into procrastination.
Oh, yeah.
You know that thing we all struggle with?
We all know it too well.
But
yeah.
Here's the thing, though. We're not just talking about like to-do lists and time management.
Right.
We're going deep, way deeper into like the psychology of why we put things off.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because procrastination really is, I think, more about our brains than our calendar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to help us unpack this,
Yes.
I've got a really interesting document here all about like the inner workings of procrastination.
Okay.
And lucky for us, we have our expert guide to walk us through it.
Well, let's jump right into the heart of it.
Okay.
The first thing to understand is that procrastination isn't simply about being lazy.
Okay.
It's often rooted in deeper emotions. Fear of failure, perfectionism, even low self-esteem.
You know, that makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
It's like our brains are trying to protect us from those negative feelings.
Right.
Even if it means like sabotaging our goals in the process.
Exactly.
Wow.
Think about it.
Yeah.
If you're terrified of like failing at something, wouldn't it almost feel easier to just avoid it altogether?
Right.
And then at least you haven't really failed.
Right. Yeah, it's like that old saying, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. But what's the cost of all this avoidance?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's more than just missed deadlines.
Yeah.
Research actually links procrastination to higher levels of stress, anxiety,
Oh, wow.
even depression.
Yeah.
It can impact our relationships, our careers, even our physical health.
Okay, so this is something we need to address.
Yeah.
But it can feel so impossible to break free, right?
Right.
Like we're stuck in this endless cycle.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's called the procrastination cycle.
Okay.
And it goes something like this.
Okay.
First, there's task avoidance, that I'll do it later mentality. Then comes temporary relief, that feeling of, phew, I've got more time, even if it's mixed with a little guilt. Oh, I know that feeling well.
Right.
It's almost like a little vacation from responsibility.
Exactly.
Even if it's only temporary.
Exactly. But like all vacations, it has to end.
Right.
And that's when the stress kicks in. As the deadline approaches, that little bit of pressure snowballs into a full-blown avalanche of anxiety.
It's like that feeling in your stomach when you realize a deadline is looming and you haven't even started yet.
Oh, tell me about it.
The worst.
That's the crisis point.
Yeah.
The moment when you're forced into a last-minute frenzy to get it done, you might sacrifice sleep, skip meals, or neglect other important areas of your life just to catch up.
And then, even if you manage to pull it off, the aftermath is rarely pretty.
Right.
You're left feeling exhausted, overwhelmed,
Yeah.
vowing to never let it happen again.
And that, my friend,
know.
is the final stage regret. We beat ourselves up for not starting sooner, for the stress we endured, and for the potential impact on our work or relationships. It's a vicious cycle, for sure. But I'm guessing you're not going to leave us trapped in this procrastination spiral, are you?
Oh, no.
There's got to be a way to break free.
Absolutely. And it all starts with understanding our own patterns of procrastination.
Okay.
You see, we all have our unique triggers.
Right.
Those specific situations or emotions that make us want to run for the hills or the couch, as the case may be.
So it's almost like we need to become detectives of our own procrastination habits.
Exactly. Think about the tasks you consistently avoid.
Yeah.
What is it about those particular tasks that makes you want to put them off? Is it the fear of not being good enough? Is it the pressure to be perfect?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's something else entirely.
Right.
Once you start to recognize your personal triggers, you can start to develop strategies to combat them.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, the strategies.
Yes.
Because I know there are tons of productivity tips and tricks out there, but they don't always work for everyone.
You're right. There's no magic bullet, no one-size-fits-all solution. But there are a number of effective strategies we can explore.
Okay.
And by understanding the psychology behind them, you can choose the ones that resonate most with you.
Okay, so let's dive into some of these strategies.
Let's do it.
I'm ready to break free from this procrastination cycle.
Great.
Yes.
One of the most powerful things you can do is break down those seemingly insurmountable tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Okay, this is something I've been trying to do more of.
Okay.
It's so easy to get overwhelmed by the sheer size of a project and then just avoid it altogether.
Exactly.
Right.
But if you can break it down into smaller, less intimidating steps,
Right.
it becomes much less daunting. It's like that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
It's so true. It's amazing how much less intimidating something feels when you break it down into bite-sized pieces. Instead of staring down an entire elephant, you're just focusing on that one bite in front of you.
Precisely.
Right.
And there's a great tool for this called the 2-minute rule. Have you heard of this one?
I have, but for those who haven't, what is the 2-minute rule and how can it help us conquer procrastination?
It's beautifully simple, really. If you're faced with a task that can be completed in 2 minutes or less, do it immediately. Don't add it to your to-do list. Don't tell yourself you'll get to it later. Just do it.
So we're talking about things like responding to a quick email, putting away those clothes you left on the chair.
Yeah.
Guilty. Or washing that one dish in the sink.
Yes.
It seems almost too easy.
That's the beauty of it, because those tiny tasks, as insignificant as they may seem, can quickly snowball into a mountain of undone chores if we let them.
Right.
And that can leave us feeling overwhelmed, and you guessed it, more likely to procrastinate.
So by tackling those 2-minute tasks right away, we're not only preventing that pileup, but also building a sense of momentum.
Exactly. Yeah. Each small win, no matter how seemingly insignificant, gives us a little boost of dopamine, that feel-good hormone, which can actually motivate us to tackle bigger tasks, like we're priming our brains for productivity.
Okay, I love that little wins lead to big victories. But what about those bigger tasks that can't be done in 2 minutes? Those projects that fill us with dread just thinking about them. How do we even begin to tackle those?
Well, this is where self-awareness and a little self-compassion go a long way.
Yeah.
Remember those procrastination triggers we talked about earlier? Understanding those is key.
Right, because sometimes it's not just about breaking down the task itself, but also addressing the emotional barriers we've built around it.
Exactly.
Right.
Let's say you're procrastinating on a work presentation. Ask yourself, why am I avoiding this?
Yeah.
Is it the fear of public speaking?
Yep.
The pressure to impress my boss?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the perfectionist in me, terrified of putting out anything less than flawless.
And once you've identified that root cause, that emotional trigger, what's the next step?
This is where a little cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can be incredibly helpful.
Now, I know we have listeners who might not be familiar with CBT. Could you give us a quick rundown of what that is and how it can help with procrastination?
Absolutely. In a nutshell, CBT focuses on identifying and changing negative thought patterns and behaviors. So, in the context of procrastination, CBT can help you challenge those self-defeating thoughts.
Right.
Like, I'm not good enough, or I'm going to fail,
Right.
and replace them with more positive and realistic ones.
So instead of saying, I'm going to completely bomb this presentation, a more helpful thought might be, I'm going to prepare thoroughly, do my best, and even if things don't go perfectly, that's okay. I'll learn from it.
Exactly. It's about shifting your perspective from self-criticism to self-compassion.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, we all make mistakes. We all have moments of self-doubt.
Right.
And beating ourselves up about it only makes it harder to move forward.
It's like that saying, progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
But knowing this intellectually and actually applying it in our day-to-day lives can feel like two different things.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that's where practice comes in. Just like any skill, overcoming procrastination takes time and effort. But the good news is our brains are incredibly adaptable. And with consistent effort, we can rewire those neural pathways and create healthier, more productive habits.
That is good news. So we've talked about breaking down tasks. We've talked about identifying those emotional triggers, challenging negative thoughts, and practicing self-compassion. What are some other strategies we can add to our procrastination busting toolkit?
Well, one powerful tool is all about creating structure and routine. Now, I know some people thrive on spontaneity, but for many of us, having a predictable schedule can work wonders.
I'm definitely in that camp.
Yeah.
I find that when I have a set routine, even if it's just a loose outline of my day, I'm much less likely to fall into the procrastination trap. It's like those tasks become automatic. I don't even have to think about them.
Precisely. It takes willpower out of the equation. When something becomes part of your regular routine, like brushing your teeth or making your bed, you don't have to expend energy debating whether or not you're going to do it. You just do it.
And speaking of routines, I've found that having a dedicated workspace, a place where I go specifically to work or focus on tasks, can be incredibly helpful.
Oh, I love that. Tell me more about how that works for you.
Well, for me, it's all about creating mental boundaries. When I sit down at my desk, I'm signaling to my brain that it's time to focus to get things done. And just as importantly, when I step away from that space, I'm giving myself permission to relax and recharge without the guilt of unfinished tasks looming over me.
That's brilliant. It's like creating a physical separation between work mode and relaxation mode.
Exactly. And while we're on the topic of creating a productive environment, let's talk about distractions. The arch nemesis of productivity.
Ah, yes, those pesky distractions. They're everywhere, aren't they? From the siren call of social media to the endless stream of notifications, it can feel like a constant battle to stay focused.
It really can. Which is why I'm a huge advocate for minimizing distractions, especially when I'm working on a task that I know I'm prone to procrastinating on.
So what are your go-to strategies for silencing those distractions?
Well, first and foremost, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb mode. Out of sight, out of mind, as they say.
I love it. Such a simple but effective strategy. Because even if we tell ourselves we're just going to quickly check that notification, those little distractions can derail our focus and send us down a rabbit hole of procrastination.
Totally. And speaking of rabbit holes, I'm also a big fan of website blockers. You know, those handy tools that prevent you from accessing distracting websites during certain times?
Oh, those are lifesavers. I use one that blocks social media and news websites for a couple hours each morning. It's amazing how much more I get done when I'm not constantly tempted to check the latest headlines or see what's happening on Instagram.
I know, right? It's like giving yourself the gift of uninterrupted focus. Okay, so we've covered minimizing distractions. What other procrastination-busting tools are in your arsenal?
Well, one that I find incredibly effective is harnessing the power of accountability.
Oh, accountability partners.
Yeah.
I've had some hilarious and surprisingly productive experiences with those. It's amazing how much more motivated you can be when you know someone else is expecting you to follow through on your goals.
It's like having a cheerleader and a coach rolled into one. Someone to celebrate your wins with and offer support when you stumble.
Exactly. And even if you don't have like a dedicated accountability partner,
Right.
there are tons of apps and online platforms out there
Oh, yeah.
that can provide that extra nudge.
Yeah.
It's like having a virtual buddy system for your goals.
I love that. Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into conquering procrastination, there's one more strategy I want to touch on, the power of setting realistic deadlines.
This is a big one and something I've definitely learned the hard way over the years. Because setting unrealistic deadlines is basically setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
Which just feeds into that cycle of procrastination we've been talking about.
Exactly. It's important to be honest with ourselves about how much we can realistically achieve in a given time frame.
Right.
And remember, breaking down larger projects into smaller tasks, each with its own mini deadline, can make the whole thing feel much more manageable.
It's like that saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Or in this case, a single achievable deadline.
I love that. And don't forget to celebrate those milestones along the way. Rewarding yourself for progress, no matter how small, can be incredibly motivating.
It's true. Sometimes we get so caught up in the end goal that we forget to acknowledge our progress along the way. Whether it's taking a break, enjoying a favorite treat, or indulging in a bit of guilt-free relaxation, those little rewards can make a big difference. Okay, we've covered a lot of practical tips and strategies.
We have.
But before we wrap up this deep dive,
Yes.
I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the mental and emotional side of procrastination.
Okay.
Because even with the best tools and techniques, sometimes those underlying feelings of stress, anxiety, or overwhelm can really sabotage our best efforts.
That's such an important point. We can't ignore the role our emotions play in procrastination.
Exactly. So what are some ways we can manage those feelings in a healthy way? Because let's face it, stress and anxiety are pretty much unavoidable in life, right?
Absolutely. But we don't have to let them control us. One thing that can be incredibly powerful is incorporating mindfulness practices into our daily routines.
Okay, tell me more about that. What exactly do you mean by mindfulness practices?
Well, it can be as simple as taking a few deep breaths before starting a task.
Okay.
Or practicing gratitude for a few minutes each day. Meditation is another fantastic tool for calming the mind and reducing stress levels.
You know, I've been hearing more and more about the benefits of meditation lately, but I have to admit, the idea of sitting still and clearing my mind for a long period of time sounds a little daunting.
I totally get it, but it doesn't have to be a huge time commitment.
Right.
Even just a few minutes of guided meditation can make a world of difference. There are so many great apps out there that make it easy and accessible.
I'm going to have to check those out. Because I know for me, even just taking a short walk can really help to clear my head and reset my focus.
Absolutely. Physical activity is another fantastic way to manage stress and boost our mood. And you know what else is interesting?
What's that?
There's even research suggesting that exercise can actually make us more productive.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more about that.
Well, it turns out that exercise can actually increase blood flow to the brain,
Okay.
which can improve our focus, memory,
Wow.
and cognitive function.
Wow, that's fascinating. So it's like a win-win exercise, helps us manage stress and makes us more productive.
Exactly. It's a powerful tool we can all benefit from.
This has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of procrastination, not just the how-tos of overcoming it,
Right.
but also the whys behind it.
I'm so glad to hear that
Yeah.
because knowledge really is power when it comes to making positive changes in our lives.
Absolutely. And speaking of positive changes, I think it's time to shift gears to our final thought for this deep dive. We've talked a lot about the negative emotions that often fuel procrastination. Fear, anxiety, self-doubt. But what if we could flip the script and actually use positive emotions to our advantage? What if instead of viewing those tasks we're prone to putting off with dread, we could find ways to make them feel more appealing, maybe even a little bit fun?
I love where you're going with this because it's
Mhm.
so true. When we're dreading something, we're far more likely to put it off. But when we're looking forward to something, when there's a
Mhm.
sense of excitement or anticipation, it can completely change our energy and motivation.
Exactly. It's like that saying, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Mhm.
Now, I know we can't always love every task on our to-do list,
Right.
but what if we could find ways to infuse them with a little bit of joy?
Absolutely. It's all about finding what works for you. Maybe it's listening to your favorite music while you work, or incorporating a bit of creativity into a mundane task,
Right?
or maybe even partnering up with someone whose energy you find inspiring.
Those are fantastic ideas.
Yeah.
It's like we're tricking our brains into looking forward to those tasks that we used to dread.
Exactly. And you know what? Often when we approach something with a more positive mindset, we might even find that it's not as bad as we built it up to be in our heads.
That's so true. It's like that old saying, the mind is a powerful thing. And when we can harness that power for good, amazing things can happen.
Absolutely. So, to our listeners out there, I challenge you to find those little sparks of joy in your day to day tasks. See if you can turn those have to do's into want to do's. It might surprise you how much of a difference it makes.
I love that challenge.
Oh,
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the science behind procrastination to practical strategies for overcoming it. But remember, this is a journey, not a destination. There will be days when you fall back into old habits, and that's okay. Be kind to yourself. Learn from those setbacks and keep moving forward one step at a time. And remember, you are not alone in this. Millions of people struggle with procrastination, but with awareness effort and a little bit of self-compassion, you can break free from that cycle and achieve amazing things.
beautifully said. And don't forget, we're here to support you on this journey.
Exactly. So be sure to check out the show notes for all the resources we mentioned today.
Yes.
Books, apps, websites, everything to help you take your procrastination busting skills to the next level. And in the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. What's one strategy you're going to try this week to combat procrastination? Share your thoughts with us and let's keep this conversation going.
We can't wait to hear from you.
Subscribe to No Limits so you don't miss it. Thanks, everyone. See you next time for another deep dive.
No Limits Podcast.